Now here's papyrus number 4. This clearly has different facsimiles from those that we find in the Book of Abraham. I don't believe very many members of our faith would notice or identify necessarily with these ones as much as they would the facsimiles actually in there. But notice the red ink. And those red ink portions did not appear at all in the breathings text. And as Nibley pointed out, that correlates with other breathings texts that have been found, that the red ink, the red notations were given here and are mentioned as being in the text that Joseph Smith translated and derived the Book of Abraham from, but they're not here. Or rather, they were not on the breathings text, but they were in some of the other papyrus that has been recovered. And here's papyrus 5. You'll note again too that the lines are much more uniform, much nicer looking, and there's that red annotations again. So these are additional pieces of papyrus. Now none of these papyrus have the Book of Abraham on them, but they demonstrate that the text that Joseph Smith was pulling from did have these red characters on it, whereas the breathings text has no red characters on it, although it does have one facsimile. So you may ask, why is that? Why would there be a facsimile that was used in the Book of Abraham that's included in the text, referenced at the beginning of this text, as it says with regard to the lion bed motif? Abraham, in the actual Book of Abraham, says, at the beginning of this text. Well, I'm going to demonstrate how this could. All right, say you had an article that you read in whatever kind of magazine, but it was an article that kind of struck you at the time you read it. It was fascinating and had useful diagrams and maybe a graph or something, and you remember the article quite vividly. Not that you could quote it verbatim, but at one point later on, you are talking with a friend or an acquaintance, and conversation comes up and it reminds you of this article that you read in this magazine, and you go back and you realize you don't have a copy of the magazine and you can't obtain one, but you look online. You head over to your computer, and sure enough, on your computer you're able to pull up the text of the article on one website. It has the full text just as you remember it. And you're thinking, great, this is wonderful. I found the text of the article. I can share this with my friend. And you're like, oh, but those diagrams and the graph are kind of vital to the document. And so you go searching around. Now you end up finding these same diagrams, exact same diagrams. You recognize them just as you recognized the text, but they're incorporated into completely different surroundings. In fact, the text that you find associated with them really has very little, if anything, to do with the diagram as it was in the original article. Same thing with the graph. You find this very same graph. You know it's the same graph, but you find it also in another area, and it's clearly not with the same text that it was in the article you read. So what you do is you take your scissors, or you print out these corresponding items. You print off your text that came from the article you found on the computer. So you take the text that you originally had, along with these, you put them together, and you've essentially recreated this article. Now, it's not exactly the same, but that's pretty much, as far as, for all intents and purposes, the article you derived is the same one that you read. Just the layout is different, and you've pulled these from different sources. That's what I believe happened with the Book of Abraham.